The old man entered the courtroom slowly, his hands bound in cuffs, head lowered, face marked by deep lines. "State your name," the clerk instructed. He replied in a hushed, quivering tone. "Elias Carter, Staff Sergeant, United States Marines." No one seated in that courtroom could have predicted what was about to come. As the judge, a composed woman, skimmed the file moments later, her hand stopped abruptly. Her face paled. That name, it belonged to the man who had once pulled her wounded brother from a burning battlefield in Fallujah and then disappeared from all records. Comment. Salute, if you believe honor isn't diminished by time or hardship. Elias Carter, age 69, sat hunched on the courtroom bench, swallowed by a faded military coat several sizes too large. Under the harsh lights, the wrinkles on his face appeared more pronounced, lines etched by years of loss and sacrifice. Once he'd worn his dress blues adorned with medals. Today, he waited in clothes donated from a shelter. Case 47B, the bailiff announced. City of Newbridge versus Elias Carter. The charges: disturbing the peace, trespassing, resisting arrest. He rose slowly, every movement labored by age and old wounds, some visible, others deeply buried from decades of service. Vietnam. Then, Iraq. The pain never left, but he had never complained. The prosecutor, clean-cut and rehearsed, addressed the room. Your Honor, Mr. Carter has been repeatedly warned not to loiter behind Jefferson Street Cafe. The owner has filed 3 complaints this month alone. What he left out was this: Elias never panhandled or asked for charity. He simply huddled near the alleyway vent, trying to stay warm as the winter gripped the city. Then came the officer's report. Carter had been discovered behind the cafe at 11:45 p.m. He'd refused to leave when ordered, but in truth, he hadn't resisted. He'd softly asked for a few more minutes to finish the half sandwich a kind-hearted cook had given him. His words hadn't mattered that night. They didn't matter now. Your Honor, the prosecutor continued, this is Mr. Carter's 3rd offense this year. We recommend 30 days of community service and a no trespass order for the downtown district. Such a ruling would ban Elias from 4th Street shelter, the only place he could find warmth. It would bar him from church meals. It would leave him out in the bitter cold with nowhere to go. Mr. Carter, the judge finally addressed him, do you have legal counsel? He shook his head. His public defender had been redirected to another court for urgent matters. Would you like to speak on your own behalf? He cleared his throat. His voice emerged hoarse. No excuses, ma'am. Just trying to stay warm. Why that particular location? She asked, voice steady but with an undertone of something else. He hesitated, then spoke. Jimmy the cook leaves food sometimes. I've known him since he was a boy. His dad and I served together in Desert Storm. And your service? She asked, veering from standard protocol. U.S. Marine Corps, he replied, sitting up. A little straighter. 1975 to 95, Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, Iraq. The judge underlined something in his file and continued reading. Her eyes paused again. Something in Carter's history had struck her deeply. Before she could say more, the courtroom doors opened, and a sharply dressed man in a tailored navy suit entered, walking briskly. He reached the defense table, set down his briefcase, and turned to the bench. Your Honor, Alexander Ross. I've just been retained to represent Mr. Carter. I apologize for the sudden appearance. Elias looked at him, puzzled. He hadn't hired a lawyer, certainly not one wearing a custom suit and leather shoes. This is highly irregular, Judge Parker said, eyes narrowed. No notification of representation was submitted. It happened moments ago, Ross responded smoothly. May I request a short recess to confer with my client? Judge Parker examined them both. Her face revealed nothing. 15-minute recess, she said, rising and stepping into her chambers. Elias leaned toward Ross. I can't pay for this. You won't have to, Ross answered softly. My firm, Williams, Ross & Parker, is taking your case pro bono. Elias flinched at the last name. Parker? Yes, like the judge, Ross said. Inside her office, Judge Olivia, Parker removed her glasses with trembling hands. 2 decades on the bench had taught her restraint, but this moment broke through. It can't be him, she murmured. She opened a drawer and pulled out a worn photograph, herself as a young woman beside her brother, Lieutenant Jack Parker, in dress blues. His arm rested proudly on her shoulder. They both smiled with hope and pride. Next to the photo lay Jack's final letter from Iraq. Its corners were soft from years of quiet grief. He'd written about a firefight outside Fallujah. They had been pinned down until Staff Sergeant Quinn had charged into gunfire, dragging a bleeding Marine to safety, covering the retreat. If not for him, Jack had written, we'd all be dead. 2 weeks later, Jack was killed by an IED. Olivia never forgot the funeral, the flag, or the Marine who said, your son saved my life. I was the one he carried. She never forgot his name, Mason Quinn. Years ago, she'd searched for him. The military said he redeployed. Then they said he'd been discharged with severe PTSD and a brain injury. Now, 20 years later, he sat in her courtroom, unknown to everyone, except her. 2 weeks had passed, yet Elias Carter still moved through his new apartment as if walking in a borrowed dream. The quiet hum of the radiator, the smell of coffee from a nearby kitchen, even the firmness of a real mattress, it all felt foreign, like some other man's life. The apartment, modest but warm, was provided through the Veterans Transitional Housing Program. It had clean walls, 2 windows, and a shelf now holding the folded flag from Jack Parker's funeral, gifted by Judge Olivia Parker the day his charges were dismissed. He stood before the mirror, adjusting a shirt that wasn't frayed or second-hand. A fresh haircut had trimmed the years from his face, though the deep lines told a story no scissors could erase. Behind him, a letter lay unopened on the table. The envelope was from the Department of Veterans Affairs, confirming full medical care, retroactive benefits, and ongoing support services. He hadn't opened it yet. The numbers didn't matter to him. What mattered was that someone, after all these years, had finally seen him. The knock at the door was light, but firm. Elias opened it slowly to find Jimmy, the cook from Jefferson Street Cafe, holding a steaming thermos and a brown paper bag. Figured you might still like the house blend, Jimmy said, handing it over, and I didn't forget the sandwich. Elias chuckled softly. Still putting too much mustard on it, huh? Jimmy grinned. Just the way you like it. They sat on the small couch, silence stretching comfortably between them. Jimmy looked around, clearly taking in the apartment. You settling in? Okay. As much as a man can, Elias said. Feels strange not counting my change before walking into a diner. Even stranger waking up somewhere warm. Jimmy nodded. People are still talking about what happened in court. My old man, too, says you're the reason I'm here at all. I was just a man trying to keep his brothers alive, Elias replied, voice low. Maybe, Jimmy said, eyes steady. But that day changed everything. For my dad. For Jack Parker. For all of us. A moment passed. Then Elias looked up. Did you know I kept that letter? The one Jack wrote about the firefight. I found it in my footlocker a year ago. Faded, torn. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. His handwriting, even now I can see it clear. Jimmy was quiet. You ever talked to the judge since... You know? Elias shook his head. Didn't seem right. She's got her life. I've got mine. She wouldn't see it that way. Later that day, Elias walked to the community center for his first VA counseling session. He paused outside, uncertain. The glass door reflected a man who had seen too many versions of himself. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The counselor's office was lined with books, and a small fountain burbled in the corner. The woman, behind the desk, early 50s and dressed plainly, stood as he entered. "Mr. Carter, I'm Dr. Reyes. Please, have a seat." He nodded politely, easing himself into the chair. "We don't have to talk about anything you don't want to," she said. "This is your space." "I've been carrying silence for so long," Elias said. "I'm not sure what talking even looks like anymore." Then we start slow. "Tell me about Fallujah." His eyes narrowed slightly, not in resistance, but in memory. April 2004. We were escorting a convoy. Dust so thick it clung to your skin. We knew the ambush was coming, just didn't know when. "What happened?" "My team got hit hard. Jack Parker was trying to pull a wounded medic back, got clipped in the shoulder. When I saw him drop, instinct took over. No thought, just moved. I got to him, dragged him back. He kept telling me to go, said to leave him." "And did you?" "I never left anyone, not while I could breathe. We got him out, but 2 weeks later," Elias's voice cracked. "2 weeks later, they sent the letter." Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. "You carried that, didn't you? Not just the moment, but the what-ifs, all of them," he whispered. "What if I'd stayed longer? What if I hadn't saved him only to lose him later? It gets heavy." Dr. Reyes leaned forward. "And yet you endured." That night, Elias returned home and found another letter. Waiting. This one hand-addressed. He recognized the writing before opening it. Olivia Parker. Inside was a single page. "Dear Sergeant Carter, there is no courtroom strong enough to contain the gratitude I carry. You gave my brother his last 2 weeks of life. Time for him to write, to call, to laugh once more. Because of you, I had a chance to say goodbye. If you're willing, I would be honored to meet you again, not as a judge, but as a sister. With respect and gratitude, Olivia." Elias folded the letter, his hands trembling not from age, but from something deeper. Recognition. After decades of fading into the background, the world was suddenly looking him in the eye. He set the letter beside Jack's photo on the shelf and whispered, "You were never forgotten." The cafe on Hemsworth Avenue hadn't changed much. The chipped green paint on the window frame, the faded specials board, and the hum of the ancient ceiling fan, all still there. Elias sat at the back booth, facing the door, just as Jack used to. Some habits, he realized, were inherited without question. He adjusted the collar of his jacket, worn but clean, and tapped his fingers lightly against the ceramic mug in front of him. The waitress had filled it with coffee a half-hour ago. Hadn't taken a sip. Not yet. He was waiting. The door creaked open. Olivia Parker stepped in from the cold, her long navy coat brushing her knees. She looked older than he remembered, but in the way grief matures a person, not time. Her eyes scanned the room. When she saw him, she smiled softly, as if acknowledging a familiar melody heard after too long. "Sergeant Carter," she said, stopping at his table. "Judge Parker," he replied, rising. "No need for titles today," she said. "Just Olivia." He nodded once and motioned to the seat across from him. They sat in silence for a moment, both unsure how to begin. The world outside moved on. Cars rolling by, the murmur of passers-by, but inside that booth, time held its breath. "I almost didn't write you," she said finally, her fingers wrapping around her coffee cup. "I wasn't sure if it would bring peace or stir something better left buried. It brought clarity, Elias said. "Jack was more than a brother to you. He was a piece of your soul." She swallowed hard. "And to you?" Elias stared out the window. "He was the best of us. Always had this way of making things lighter, even when the sky was falling. I've carried the weight of his death longer than I've carried my own. Name." "I read your record," she said. "After the trial, not the charges, the service reports, the commendations, the letters from your men. You were their anchor." He didn't respond right away. Funny thing about anchors, they're heavy. A long silence followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that happens when people are finally allowed to feel without interruption. "I want to ask you something," Olivia said, leaning forward. "Do you remember what Jack's last words were? Before you pulled him out?" Elias blinked. The question pierced deeper than she knew. "Yes," he said slowly. "He said, 'Tell Liv she was always my hero.'" He looked up at her. He didn't cry. He didn't plead, just said those words like he'd been waiting years to say them. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she placed a small object on the table, a silver St. Michael medallion, dulled with age. "He wore this through basic, gave it to me before deployment. I'd like you to have it." Elias stared at it for a moment, then reached forward and closed her hand around it. "No," he said. "It belonged to both of you. Keep it." She nodded, accepting his decision. "Then let me offer something else." "What's that?" "A chance to come back. I'm helping build a community center downtown for veterans. Counseling, meals, job training. We need someone with lived experience, someone who understands what it means to come home to silence. I can't think of anyone better." Elias tilted his head. "You sure about that?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted toward the photo that hung near the register, an old black and white of soldiers returning home, arms in the air, laughter frozen mid-cheer. He looked back at Olivia. "I'll do it," he said, "but only if we name a room after Jack." She smiled. That was already the plan. 2 months later, Elias stood beneath a bronze plaque that read, "The Jack Parker Reflection Room, for all who gave and all who remember." The community center buzzed with quiet activity, veterans speaking in hushed tones, volunteers offering meals, counselors leading small groups in sunlit rooms. Elias wasn't the man who once disappeared into alleyways and soup kitchens. He was the man they turned to now. And every morning as the center opened, he paused by that plaque and touched the cool metal with 2 fingers. "Morning, Jack," he'd whisper. "We're still here."